Okay, now with the background base wash is done, I'm going to continue to build layers. Since I have that base background done, I can go back on this later. So I'm just going to start in here in the good old home studio. All right, happy to be home. And I'm just going to start in with some of the areas of medium greens. Okay, I'm still not pushing everything up to these dark values. I'm just going to kind of get to the medium value colors that I have in my piece. So again, where I have values, I suggest to working, if you're a righty, work left to right. If you're a lefty, work right to left. So I got some more water on my brush. I got my paper towel. I'm going to get some green, and I'm going to put into this just a little bit less water this time and a little bit more pigment. All right, now one thing you want to know, out of the bottle green or right out of the top here green, may or may not be too accurate. So I'm going to always suggest mixing it with something. And in this case, there's a little bit of a yellow green to it. So I have the base green here, and I'll pull a little bit of the yellow green in here, and I'm looking at the match and how much closer that is. And notice too how much less water. So if I make a mark with this now, you can see how much brighter it is as far as the overall opacity, all right, of that color. So if I start in here, I got to look at that highlight line down the center of this leaf. And again, I'm going to take a little bit of water. I'm on a dry surface again. And I'm just going to use the brush to put in those areas of light value. Remember, I'm not trying to get every line 100% perfect. Watercolor is about using the brush and allowing the light to show through. So I can see it goes down along that shadow, and I'm trying to maintain the shape of the vein in the leaf there. All right, I got that highlight, and then in and around that highlight, there's some areas of scumble and jumble. The vein comes right along here. It's very, very pronounced. And that highlight, that strong highlight is right up against this, so I'm going to leave that visible. Now I just took a little bit of a darker green because I can see I want it to blend. It gets from light green into a slightly darker green as it comes down there. So I have the yellow green and then the true green. So while the wash is damp, I was able to blend the two together. And even with that, I can take the water off my brush and take some of the excess paint. So I just have a damp brush right now. I could just kind of soften that transition. Now I've got the dark here, so I want to pull into this leaf again. So I'll come back into my yellow green, and I can see that this is a little bit darker, this leaf over here. So I'm keeping my yellow green, but I'm pulling it in between the two greens, and I'm going to put some of that in. And I can see that I've got areas where that vein is. So if I do the vein, leave the space in there for that vein, I can just make sure if I widen the bristle, all right, thin bristle, wide bristle, all right, you can see how that leaves that thickness, or what could be perceived as this thickness for the vein in the leaf. Okay, gets a little bit lighter out here, so I'm going to come back to some of the yellow green and take away some of that stripiness in there. There's some stripiness, and I'm kind of adding a little bit more of a darker value now on that edge. And the bottom edge here is a little bit of texture on the edge of that leaf, so I'm just using the tip of the flat brush and bouncing it. Just kind of bouncing it along that edge. Okay. Some texture there where that highlight is. So I'm using almost a dry brush and just punching in some of those darks. I can add some more subtle layering with that slightly darker color. I can see that it's definitely going to be a little bit darker in here. So I'm going to add a little bit of that darker green right there. So again, these are just the medium values. I'm not doing any shading yet, just trying to get in here with the medium values. All right, so I'm going to continue here. I got a little bit of a yellow-green. So I'll take a dab of water, come back to my yellow-green, and I'll just keep working my way across. Maintain that highlight edge there. This is actually dark, this background here. So this comes down this way, and look, I just left that highlight, that little highlight right along that edge. So I'm putting in a little bit of that medium value on a damp surface, and you notice I'm texturizing it because it's got a little bit of a fuzzy feel to that part. And it's dark over here, comes down like that. And that's the medium part for that. It's just going to keep going. All right, putting in some of those medium values. Getting a little bit darker up in here. So I'm going to take a dot of blue and just a tiny bit more water. And I'm going to put a little bit of blue into the green. So as I get up in here, I can show the separation between this and that piece. Maybe a little darker. You notice I've only used analogous colors. Colors next to each other on the wheel. Got the yellows, the greens, and the blues. This top edge is very dark. And it gradates, all right? So that's gonna stay aligned. If I leave that sit and I'm looking at this little part of this leaf right here, I need to pull that out. So I take a clean brush, dampen the water, and I'm gonna pull that. See how I just broke up that hard edge? I'm gonna pull that out, just a damp brush, just pull that so it gradates out to that highlight that's on the edge of the leaf, okay? And now I'm gonna come in with some yellow orange. So put a little bit of orange here for the stem, like I had before. I got that yellow orange, and of course there's a little bit of a green up here, but I take more of a dry brush here. And see how that dry brush adds a little bit of a texture? Let me zoom in on that. All right, you see how that dry brush, you can see the bristles on the brush are separated, right? So when I did that on here, it created that dry brush technique where the bristles kind of, there appears to be some space, all right, between the bristles, and it kind of creates an interesting texture. So that's a great way to work with, different brush techniques. So watch what I'm going to do to get the veins back. I'm going to put a pale or a medium wash over that whole leaf. Medium wash over the whole leaf. Now, I'm going to take my round brush, wet it, to take some of the excess water off so I get a nice clean point. And I'm just going to take my brush here and I'm going to lift, like I did before, just lift out that thin little stem. Back to a nice point, and I got that vein that I want to lift out of here. So a little bit of pressure on the leaf, lifting that out. And guess what? If I make that, well, it's really fat there. I don't like the way that looked when lifting. I can just get my brush and paint back over it. Maybe soften that edge a little. And lift it back out. So those are some tricks. If you think you made a mistake, you can just go back and lift stuff out just by painting back over top of it and lifting out those areas. Now obviously there's still some darks and things that I need to get into there, and there's some really lights here. So this small little bud right there, I'm going to use that yellow, and I'm going to do a wet and wet mottled wash where I'm getting a good amount of pigment because there's a strong amount of yellow in there. Just a dot of water, and I'm going to put that bright yellow in. Put that bright yellow in here. Let me zoom in on this. You can see what happens with the mottled wash. So right in there, putting that yellow in up against the stem. And now if I take a little bit of this green from the source, and I just come in and take a little bit off there. Let me get a little bit of that blue green. There we go. Just kind of bounce it around a little bit, almost stippling it. And obviously this side's going to end up being darker, but again, I'm just putting medium values in here. Okay? And then of course there's some other greens in here that are eventually going to get a little bit darker. All right, so I can just put some of those in. Got some more of that light yellow green on the stem. From this piece comes down into here, and again I got a lot of dark greens in here. If you notice too, right here, where am I zoom out a little bit? Right here on this leaf, it's a shadow, so it's shaded underneath. So I have this light yellow green part of the vein that comes underneath. That's going to be right here. Everything else is going to be a darker value, so I'm not going to paint in that medium green color yet. You can see there's a little bit of a light tone on the outer edge of that leaf right there. Leaf folds over itself a little bit here, so I'll put that in. There's a medium light yellow vein on this one right here. And if I don't like that looks too thick, I'll just take a paper towel and blot and lift it away, and then I use the point of my thin brush and boop, just get that nice and sharp, how it needs to be. All right. Notice what I'm doing there? I'm not painting all the way up to the edge of the leaf because the edge of the leaf has a light value to it that's picking up some of the sunlight. So where I put that light line right here in, I'm just using the medium green and coming right up against it. There's a little bit of a reflective highlight right in there. So I'm going to make sure I leave that. All right, that's kind of right above that point right there. And again, it's not going to look, we don't want to get too tight too quick, but you can already start to see how it's starting to have a little bit more representation. Get some of that blue-green, because this leaf over here and this leaf over here, they start to get some of those darker colors. So instead of doing a medium layer, I can go in with a little bit more like a 3/4 layer. Need a little more green in that. Kind of like a 3/4 layer. And again, I've got that highlight on there, so I don't want to lose that. I'll get in and around that highlight. I've got veins on that I got to pick out. So I'm going to do the same that same lifting technique that I did before with the thin brush. Just clean it. Take the water off, get a nice sharp point. And I'm going to lift that vein back out there. And I'm going to lift this vein out. All right, so now I'm going to move into a little bit of the medium values on the flower. So I just have a damp paper towel off to the side here. I'm going to clean out my palette again. And again, medium reds. Make sure you clean out your brush. And you might quite often want to go change out your water, get some clean water. So medium red values, again, you can see I just have straight red It's a little bit more opaque. Not solid, but a little bit more opaque. Not as much water. All right. And I'm going to start by finding those medium values. Remember, I have some highlights in here I don't want to lose. I've got some areas of light value I don't want to lose. So I need to use more of a dry brush technique in those areas, right? Like so that the bristles, I said, the bristles are kind of pulling apart. Those areas in here where there's that almost like those sun rays or that burst of color coming off of that. All right, I need to make sure that I'm monitoring that and making sure that I don't lose that in those areas. All right, now I've got to start to put these strokes in like this. Otherwise, those lines are going to stay. It's okay that they stay here. And I still need to go in and soften those there. But this is really, really brush strokey. All right, that's really, really brush strokey till where it meets up with this. And it comes down here. All right, so square brush is great because you can get flat. All right, and I need to maintain that lightness in the middle there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some clean water and I'm just going to put that clean water back in that space again. Right up against that edge. Watch what happens where those bristles were right up against that edge. All right, it's going to start to pull some of this in there and create a really nice effect. All right, watch this here. See, I get up against that water and it creates a nice soft effect in there. Now this is a little bit lighter here, so I'm going to do a little bit of a lighter pink. This is where some people would say, oh, I need to add white. No, you have white. You have the white of the paper. Again, right now I'm just doing the medium pinks. All right, so I'm going to clean my brush and come back to my medium red. Now I'm going to pull some of that out. As you can see here, it kind of goes out a lot. Just take some of that clean water and follow it out this way. Just pulling it out. So now as I come in, it's light there. I'm doing this, I'm following the contour of the flower there. A little bit more red. There's a highlight right here. Now this is a shaded area under here, right? That's going to be a shade of red, so I am going to probably use a little bit of a darker shade of red to create that fold and crease, just like here. But again, I'm just putting in medium values right now because there's a value difference between this part of the petal and that part of the petal. So I'm just putting in a slightly darker medium red value to help show the separation between these two areas. All right. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is part 2.